Welcome to another masterclass video where I show you a specific part of a painting or drawing that I'm doing at the moment. Now, in the last video, I showed you how to draw this puffin. Now, I've done some of the painting. Some of you are going to say, well, you didn't show us that other bit of painting, Michelle. But the point of these videos is not to show you every single part of a painting as a follow-along tutorial. There would be, for 10-minute videos, there would be 100 of them just to get through the puffin. If you want the full puffin tutorial, I'm hoping to release that one soon. If you're watching this video in the future, then possibly there'll be a link for that in the video description. But what I'm going to concentrate on today is the sky, and I'm going to change it a little bit. So I showed you this picture last week and I popped it in the Facebook group for you. However, the actual picture is bigger. And you can see what I've done so far here. I've put some shadows on my bird and I've put some lighter areas of foliage. Apologies if you can hear Gimlet. He's really being a complete nuisance today because he should be sleeping at the moment. I've put some lighter areas of foliage down here. There will now be a short video cut whilst I go and feed the cat. So we'll continue filming. You'll be shocked to find, ladies and gentlemen, that there was actually already food in Gimlet's bowl. The problem I have today is that he's normally asleep around this time of day and he doesn't actually want or need anything. He doesn't want to go out. He doesn't want food. He's just bored. And like a small toddler, he's going to meow at me for no reason whatsoever. But we'll struggle on. Here is the whole picture. So we've got more going on here. Now, when I started this picture, I thought to myself, the composition is a little uncomfortable in that it's got a line that goes one side to the other. Now, if it was going out of the corner, it would be worse. So that's not too bad. But nevertheless, I'd like to make it a little bit more indistinct than that, rather than have, these two areas of colour and this line dividing the middle. This is also quite blurred here. So what I've decided to do is almost like a vignette, but I'm going to allow the painted areas to go off of each side like this. But I'm going to fade out the paint here. And I'm going to fade out the sky to white at the top. I say sky, it could be sea. It's impossible to tell because it's quite blurred in the photograph. But we're going to make this nice blue area that's crisp around the edges here. And then we're going to fade it out as it goes up here. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually take a look at the edges where I've drawn. Clean up with an eraser, clean up around here and just think about what's going on here. We've got this kind of gap coming in here. Could just sort of fade that in as well. But equally, it might be easier just to fill that gap with another leaf so that I've got a distinct edge here. This is quite a difficult technique we're going to pull off today. And so we have to make sure that everything is exactly as we want it and that we have everything ready to hand. We're not going to get halfway through the painting and decide that we've left a certain paintbrush in a cupboard or we need another water jar out. Interruptions from cats notwithstanding. So let's talk about the colour that I have chosen here to paint the background behind my bird. I'll put the original here so you can see. Now, this is a colour from my floral set, which I designed called Delphinium. I've been astonished, actually. I've developed several sets of paints over the years. I've been astonished how much I actually reach for this one. It's that perfect sort of gap between blue and purple, which is why I called it Delphinium. It was meant for flower painting, but actually it's such a useful colour and it's such a beautiful, pure looking colour as well. If you don't have this one, then the closest colour will be something like a French ultramarine. Honestly, you could do this background with any kind of blue. I often drop a little pink into my blue. You have to be careful with skies. If you go too far into sort of aqua and those really icy blues, you can end up with things just looking a little bit cold. So, obviously it depends where you are in the world, but this is unlikely to be UK. We do have a few puffins, there's some in the Bristol Channel, which I tried to see once but couldn't see. And I think we have a few up in Scotland. So there are a few puffins, but who knows where in the world this photo was taken. Anyway, I digress. I have chosen this colour. There is an advantage to having a colour that's straight out of the tube and ready to use, in that we can grab more of it as we go through and we're not going to get colour variation. But nothing's wrong. I mean, colour variation wouldn't be wrong. And this is a difficult type of background to do. You may find you get drying lines. You may find you need to put a second coat over it. You may even find you mess it up completely. But, you know, that's the fun of painting. You can always go on top with a much more textured, much more forgiving background later on if you want to. But we're going to give this a go. Now, I talked about being ready. This is so important if you've got a large area of paint to cover, if you've got a large sky to do. You might do it in several layers, but you've got to work each layer quickly. I'm only planning to put one layer on this, but we'll see how it dries and how well I manage to do it. But you need to make sure you've got everything ready first. So let me show you what I'm going to use. I've got my paint, of course. I've got a large brush with a point. I've got this one here. I could achieve the whole thing with this, but it will be a little bit easier if I have some flat brushes too. I've got this brush which I've always kept over the years just for applying clean water. There's an advantage to having a brush that only applies clean water because you're never going to find that you think it's clean and there's a little bit of pink in it or something like that. So try and keep this one only for water. And then, not sure if I'll need it, but I've got it on hand anyway, so I don't have to run looking for it. I've got a large flat brush in case I just need to spread quite a lot of the blue quickly. I'll have to go next to the bird with this brush here because of the point. Just down here, if I point with my, actually get a darker paintbrush, just down here, I do have a tiny bit of masking fluid just to, I'm hoping you can see that little bit of white, which is sort of the other side of the eye socket of the puffin. It's not necessary to do that, but I just thought that it would be easy to paint over that by mistake, so I've popped a little bit of masking fluid there. The other thing I have got on hand is paper towel. Always need to dry your brush and control your water levels. I've also got 2 water jars. I'll be using one for clean water and one for my paintbrush. So we're making sure that we've got absolutely everything here ready to go. I've got enough paint squeezed out. So let's get started and see what we can do with this background. Now what we need to do is add clean water up the top here, paint around the edge and take the paint up to meet the clean water. Sounds simple, but of course it's not, because if I wet all of this area, it's going to dry it too quickly. So I need to wet a little bit with clean water and then paint a bit and then work my way around. Now, because I am right-handed, I'm going to start down here and work up. But if you were left-handed, you would be far better to start up here and work down. So you don't want to be risking leaning in your paint. We've got enough going on without worrying about things like that. So I'm going to start down this end by adding some clean water. And although we're not going to take the paint, right to the top, I will take the clean water right to the top, simply because, you may as well, to be honest, it's easy to come off the edge of the water. And we want this wet, but we don't want puddles. And because I can't quite see where I'm taking clean water, I don't want to go right to the edge of the bird either. Anytime I've got too much water or paint on the paper, I can just use my brush as a vacuum to sweep it out. So I've sort of gone up to the tip of the tail there. And now I'm going to quickly grab my other paintbrush. Let me bring this in a little so you can see, and pick up some paint. So this paint is quite wet, but I will control it later on if I need to. It needs to be fairly wet at the moment so that we can sort of keep control over it. And then as we come up, you see how it's going to hit the water. Now, the wetter the paint is, the more it will spread. I've got a long way for it to go up there, so I'm not too worried if it spreads a fair distance. And I'm going to dip back in and get some more paint. Speed at this point is a little more important than accuracy. If your rock changes shape, nobody's going to know. I'm going to come up like this, paint around here. I'm hoping that my hand is not in the way too much. I'm going to spread up here and dip in and get some more paint like so. Now the trick to this, because you can't keep the whole painting wet at once, but you can avoid going back. So I'm not going to take this wet paintbrush and go back here, because what I'll be doing then is introducing wet paint into an area that is semi-dry, and that will cause drying lines. Now, as I said, I don't mind a little bit of texture in this painting, and this is a textured paint. It has got some ultramarine in, and so there is going to be some texture to this, and that's fine. I'm going to come around here like this and come up here. And now I've got to the area where I've pretty much met the water, getting a little bit of a drying line there. So I'm just going to try and even those water levels up a little bit. You can make this area here where it meets the water as interesting as you like. Now I'm going to go in with more clean water. The brush isn't too wet at the moment. I'll take it wetter as I come up here. Wherever you put something that's very wet next to something that's a little drier, you're going to get a lot of background. So we're controlling the water levels here. And of course, anywhere that the bird is grey or dark, we will have the opportunity of painting over the top of what we've done. So I'm going to come in like this. See here how the paint's wetter so we get more bleeding. It's really up to you if you like that or not in a particular part of the painting. I don't mind it here. I think it looks quite interesting. I want to go a little higher up here. So I'm just going to take this paint up like so as I continue to work around. Notice I've got a very slight drying line here. If I go back to that, I guarantee you I will make it 10 times worse. I'm going to leave it alone. I can always take more paint on after it's dry. I can put a second layer on. Going back like that is a big mistake people make. It just makes things worse because you make the water levels more uneven. I'm going to come around here. See how I've got quite strong paint here. Now I don't actually need to go that dark here because the bird's head is dark, but I think it'll still show up. Just going to move that piece of paper, it's annoying me. So just coming around like this, painting as quickly as I can. Now I've gone up to sort of the top of the paper here, but actually I don't mind that because that goes along with this strategy that we're going to have of fading up to the corners. It's not a proper vignette. I'm not keeping it soft all the way around the bird. We're going to allow the paint to go off those two edges. So I'm coming in here now and everything's getting a little bit dry. So I'm going to try and be a little bit quicker. And you see that by having a brush that's quite large, it gives me more time to go around these things. See, I'm moving between areas so that nothing really has a chance to get completely dry. As I said, speed is more important than accuracy here. If there's any minor errors, we can probably clean them up later on. And at this point, I'm going to quit while I'm ahead. Let me move the board slowly so you can see the whole thing. I think I'm probably going to end up being quite happy with that. And wasn't it nerve-wracking and fun to do?